Hello and welcome to NDTV 24/7. I'm Rohit Wellington. Let's begin with our top story. The government on Tuesday cleared the fourth vaccine for emergency use in the country, the US-made Moderna. Mumbai-based pharma major Cipla has been allowed to import Moderna's COVID vaccine for restricted emergency use in India. The details of a rollout plan are not out yet. It is not clear how many doses will be available in India and when. Cipla has said in a statement that it is supporting Moderna with the regulatory approval and importation of vaccines to be donated to India. At this stage, there is no definitive agreement on commercial supplies. That's what Cipla has said. Moderna is the first mRNA vaccine approved in India. Now, quickening the pace in coverage of vaccination and regaining the momentum of economic recovery is the current focus area of the Ministry of Home Affairs as far as the COVID containment strategy is concerned. Union Home Secretary Ajay Bhalla has written to states and union territories saying effective planning and vaccination focusing on prompt coverage of priority groups and hubs of economic activity should be prioritized. The letter has asked the states and union territories to keep focusing on the five-fold strategy for effective management of the pandemic: test, track, treat, vaccination, and adherence to COVID-appropriate behavior. Now, Bengaluru is hoping to vaccinate over 90% of its eligible population with at least one dose by the 15th of August. The city has crossed a milestone with over 50 lakh vaccinations. The eligible population in the city is around 99 lakhs. Much of this has been achieved through public-private partnership, with the private sector being actively involved in the drive. Maya Sharma reports.
This special vaccination camp in Bengaluru for transgenders was just one of the many camps that are being held by the BBMP with the involvement of the private sector.
ಇದು ತಗೊಳ್ಳೇಬೇಕಲ್ವಾ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕೋವಿಡ್ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ವ್ಯಾಕ್ಸಿನ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ತುಂಬ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯದು ತಗೊಳ್ಳೇಬೇಕು ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ ನಾವು ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ ತಗೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ.
One of the private groups helping out here is ACT Grants, a coalition of startups which began pandemic work in the first wave and helped with oxygen supply in the second wave.
And the idea was, can startups come together and bring the speed and the execution capabilities to fight the pandemic?
With vaccines in short supply, the drive was targeted towards high-density zones and people in high-risk occupations. Where are all these vaccines coming from? Who actually pays for them?
Started this program called Vaccinate and Donate, where some of the larger companies that had frontline workers like Swiggy, Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, they wanted their frontline to be vaccinated. They not only paid for vaccinating their employees and their frontline, but they also donated a lot of vaccines to the unorganized frontline.
A public-private effort to keep the people of Bengaluru as safe as possible in the third wave. With Govindan Kumar, Maya Sharma in Bengaluru for NDTV.
Well, the other big story, Prime Minister Modi met National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Union Home Minister Amit Shah and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh on Tuesday in a high-level meeting that came days after that unprecedented drone attack at the Jammu Air Base on Sunday. Government sources said that there were discussions on futuristic challenges in the defence sector and equipping our forces with modern equipment. Aspects relating to involving more youth, startups and strategic community were also discussed. That's what the sources said after that 2-hour-long meeting. Now, Jammu Air Base attack is now going to be investigated by the NIA. India's tech agency NTRO is also going to assist NIA in this matter. Jammu and Kashmir Police DGP Dilbagh Singh told NDTV that the initial probe into the attacks on the airbase reveals that Lashkar might be behind this attack.
Is there a connection between the attack on the Jammu airbase on Sunday and the blast outside the residence of the Mumbai attack mastermind Hafiz Saeed in Lahore on the 23rd of June? Intelligence agencies claim it cannot be ruled out. The Lashkar came under immense pressure after blasts in Lahore last week. In fact, Jammu Kashmir Police DGP Dilbag Singh told NDTV that the initial probe into the attacks on the airbase reveals that the Lashkar might be behind the attack, as the terror outfit has the capability to operate weaponized drones. Drones spotted and thwarted at the Kaluchak and Ratnachak army bases also seem to belong to the Lashkar. A 22-year-old operative of the TRF, a Lashkar front outfit, was arrested by the J&K police, and a 4-kilo package of IED was found on him. The situation on the ground also suggests that Lashkar activity has increased in Jammu and Kashmir over the last 1 week. Not taking any chances, Indian agencies have raised an alert in areas near security assets.
पूरा तैयारी कर लिए, थ्रेट बहुत सीरियस थ्रेट है, ये टेक्नोलॉजिकल थ्रेट है, इसको टेक्नोलॉजी के थ्रू भी हम लोग रिस्पॉन्स करेंगे और उसमें हम लोग काफी डिप्लॉयमेंट कर लिए, क्योंकि ये स्ट्रेटेजिक इंपॉर्टेंस है, जितने वाइटल इंस्टेंशन है इसको भी प्लस एलसी पर भी.
Interestingly, India also raised its concern over drones being used as weapons with the United Nations. In a statement to the General Assembly, India has said the possibility of the use of weaponized drones for terrorist purposes against strategic and commercial assets calls for serious attention by the member states. Meanwhile, India's Tech Intelligence Agency, the National Technical Research Organization, has been asked by the Home Ministry to monitor the frequencies on which low-flying drones operate. With Neeta Sharma in New Delhi, Anusya Mathur for NDTV.
There are now 4 FIRs against Twitter in 3 states. UP and MP police have booked Twitter executives for showing distorted map. Twitter has been charged for creating enmity between communities. Delhi police, meanwhile, have registered a case against Twitter for allowing child abuse content on its platform. Stringent POCSO Act has been invoked against Twitter by the Delhi police. Twitter Inc. and Twitter Communications India Private Limited have been named as accused by the Delhi police. In some other news, a case under the National Security Act has been filed against a Samajwadi Party leader who was arrested in the matter involving an assault on an elderly Muslim man in Ghaziabad in western Uttar Pradesh. Umaid Pahalwan was arrested earlier this month by the Uttar Pradesh police, who said that he had given religious color to the attack on Abdul Samad, with a live interview of the man on Facebook. Political news now. Rahul Gandhi on Tuesday said that there was no meeting scheduled with Navjot Singh Sidhu a day after the disgruntled Punjab Congress leader's team said that he had a meeting with the Gandhis. Meanwhile, Aam Aadmi Party's Arvind Kejriwal was in Punjab and has promised 300 units of free power per family if the party wins the election.
Navjot Singh Sidhu leaving for Delhi to meet Rahul Gandhi and his sister Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, except there was no meeting.
After waiting the whole day, Rahul Gandhi was surprised to see so many journalists waiting outside his house and asked why are so many people waiting outside. And he was quite categorical in saying that there was no schedule to meet Navjot Singh Sidhu today.
वो कभी भी राहुल जी से प्रियंका जी से मिल सकते हैं, इसमें कहीं कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, इसमें कहीं किसी तरीके की बाधा नहीं है.
Sidhu has been critical of his party's Chief Minister Amrinder Singh just months ahead of the Assembly election campaign, forcing the central leadership to hold a series of truce meetings, even setting the Chief Minister a deadline to look into the demands of Sidhu and other dissidents.
Back in Chandigarh, Amrinder Singh faced another challenger, Delhi's AAP Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who effectively launched his political campaign with a series of ambitious promises.
Back in Chandigarh, the Punjab Chief Minister faced another challenger today, Delhi's Aam Aadmi Party Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, who effectively launched his party's election campaign with a series of ambitious promises. Mr. Kejriwal promised 300 units of free electricity per month to each household if the Aam Aadmi Party comes to power. Punjab is currently facing power outages.
पंजाब में आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार हर परिवार को 300 यूनिट तक बिजली मुफ्त देगी. जितने पुराने बिल हैं, डोमेस्टिक के जितने पुराने बिल हैं, सारे माफ किए जाएंगे. 24 घंटे बिजली दी जाएगी, जैसे दिल्ली के अंदर हमने 24 घंटे बिजली दी.
This promise takes on the Congress directly, as it had already asked the CM to provide free 200 units to all households.
दिल्ली में पेंडिंग बिलों को केजरीवाल ने माफ कर दिया है। क्या दिल्ली के लोगों को बिजली का बिल नहीं आ रहा? 15 रुपए यूनिट के हिसाब से बिजली का बिल आ रहा है। सफाई कर्मचारियों के कितने बिल आ रहे हैं जो ठेके पे भर्ती हुए हैं?
With 24% vote share in the last elections, Aam Aadmi Party is the largest opposition. Combined with the Congress's infighting, Aam Aadmi Party's power promises and the Akali's tie-up with the BSP, Amrinder Singh's battle for re-election seems to have begun. With Mohammad Ghazali and Sunil Prabhu, Joshua Chin for NDTV.
Former Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh skipped appearing before the Enforcement Directorate for a second time on Tuesday after being summoned by the agency in connection with a money laundering investigation against him and people close to him. 2 of his aides have been arrested by the ED. The case has political implications in Maharashtra, and the NCP held a top-level meeting to discuss the issue.
Top leaders of the Nationalist Congress Party are meeting at senior NCP leader Praful Patel's residence to discuss the implications of the ED's action against former Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh. Senior leaders like Supriya Sule, Chhagan Bhujbal, Jitendra Awad, Jayant Patil are attending the meeting. The NCP suspects that the ED action could go as further as arrests, and therefore steps need to be taken to discuss the implications of what the ED could do in the future.
ED का दबाव बनाकर नेताओं को डराने का प्रयास हो रहा है, झूठे मामले बनाकर लोगों को फंसाया जाए, ये कहीं ना कहीं पूरी तरह से केंद्र सरकार के इशारे पे सभी संस्थाओं का दुरुपयोग करके ये राजनीतिक दबाव बनाया जा रहा है। हमें लगता है वे सहयोग पूरी तरह से कर रहे हैं।
Former Maharashtra Home Minister Anil Deshmukh did not appear before the Enforcement Directorate for a second time on Tuesday. In a letter to the agency, he said he was 72 years old, had COVID comorbidities and was willing to appear via video conferencing. Enforcement Directorate sources say the investigation has found money being routed through companies connected to Anil Deshmukh's relatives. Sources told NDTV the investigation agency found money was routed through 11 companies directly linked to relatives of Anil Deshmukh. The ED found 13 companies indirectly linked to Anil Deshmukh and his associates were also used to channel funds. The ED suspects this was done by inflating balance sheets and layering of money from one company to the other. ED sources say 2 Delhi-based businessmen have also given statements to the agency, saying that they were contacted to make payments in cheque to a trust in the name of Anil Deshmukh's son, Rishikesh Deshmukh, in exchange for cash they received. Deshmukh's lawyers have sought 7 days to appear. The Enforcement Directorate is yet to decide on their request. His lawyers say the agency has not provided documents and the agency's motive is not clear. The lawyers add this is a politically motivated case and Anil Deshmukh is not evading the process of law.
हम लोग जो है कोऑपरेट कर रहे हैं और ड्यू प्रोसेस है और ड्यू प्रोसेस ऑफ लॉ हम लोग मान रहे हैं। कितना दिन का समय मांगा है? हमने 7 दिन मांगा है। हमने 7 दिन।
The Shiv Sena, which shares power in Maharashtra with the NCP, Anil Deshmukh's party, backed him and repeated the charge that the Enforcement Directorate action was political vendetta, including the action against its own MLA Pratap Sarnaik, who had earlier written to the Chief Minister asking him to patch up with the BJP to stop the ED from targeting Sena ministers and MLAs.
ये सब जानबूझकर हो रहा है, चाहे एनसीपी के मेंबर्स हो या शिवसेना के एमएलए हो या मंत्री हो, केंद्रीय जांच एजेंसी को अपने लपेटे में लेकर हमारी सरकार को तकलीफ देने का ये काम चल रहा है.
For now, the Shiv Sena and the NCP are sticking to the official line, which is describing the ED's actions against Anil Deshmukh as misuse of central agencies to target NCP and Shiv Sena MLAs and ministers. But the NCP separately is also chalking out its own strategy to handle any fallout of the ED's actions. In Mumbai, with camera person Praveen G. Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Welcome back. When Annie SP, a Kerala police sub-inspector, walked out of her abusive marriage more than a decade ago, she was merely 19 and already nursing a newborn. Today, at 31, she is policing the very same town whose streets she once roamed doing small jobs like selling insurance, even lemonade and ice cream. Her life of grit and determination stands out even more at a time when a number of cases of dowry deaths and domestic abuse have been reported in the state. Sneha Koshi reports.
31-year-old Sub-Inspector Annie SP at Varkala in Thiruvananthapuram. Prompt at addressing concerns despite a steady flow of visitors to congratulate her.
ഒരു പ്രൗഡ് ഫീലാണ് ഇവിടെ ഈ മണ്ണിൽ നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ പ്രൗഡ് ഫീൽ വരാൻ കാരണം എൻ്റെ കണ്ണുനീര് വീണ മണ്ണിൽ വീണ്ടും ഞാനൊരു 2 സ്റ്റാറൊക്കെ ഉള്ള ഒരു പോലീസ് ഓഫീസറായിട്ട് വരുമ്പോഴുള്ളൊരു ഫീൽ വേറെയാണ്.
It was at Varkala that she once sold lemonade and ice cream for a living, among the several odd jobs she did to raise a son as a single mother, as she walked out of an abusive marriage at 19 with a 9-month-old son. She now is being transferred to Ernakulam, where her son studies on compassionate grounds.
മോന് 9 മാസം പ്രായമായപ്പോഴായിരുന്നു നമ്മൾ സെപ്പറേറ്റ് ആയത്. അപ്പോഴത്തേക്ക് ഞാനും മോനും ഒറ്റയ്ക്കായിരുന്നു പിന്നെ ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. അപ്പോൾ 1 വയസ്സാകുന്നത് മുതൽക്ക് അവനെ ഡേ കെയറിൽ വിട്ടിട്ടാണ് ഞാൻ ജീവിക്കുന്നത്. അന്ന് എനിക്ക് 3500 രൂപയാണ് ശമ്പളം. 3000 രൂപ എനിക്ക് വീട്ടുവാടക കൊടുത്തിട്ട് 400 രൂപ അവന് ഡേ കെയറിൽ ഫീ കൊടുത്തിട്ട് ബാക്കി 100 രൂപയ്ക്കായിരുന്നു ഞാൻ ജീവിതം. അപ്പോൾ ബാക്കി ജീവിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ട് നൈറ്റ് ഫുള്ളിരുന്ന് ടൈപ്പ് വർക്കും ഒക്കെ ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ് DTPയും അതും ഇതെല്ലാം ചെയ്തിട്ടായിരുന്നു അന്നത്തെ ജീവിതം എല്ലാം ഞാൻ മുന്നോട്ട് നീക്കിക്കൊണ്ടിരുന്നത്.
Left to fend for herself for years, her mother joined her 2 years back. Her father is yet to speak to her. But her message to young women is clear.
ലൈഫ് നമ്മളുടെ അഡ്ജസ്റ്റ്മെൻറ്റ് തന്നെയാണ്. കാര്യം രണ്ട് ധ്രുവങ്ങളിൽ നിൽക്കുന്ന ആൾക്കാർ തമ്മിലാണ് മാരേജ് നടക്കുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ നമുക്ക് എപ്പോഴാണോ നമുക്കത് എന്താ പറയുക നമുക്ക് താങ്ങുന്നതിനപ്പുറം ആകുന്നത്, പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഫിസിക്കലായിട്ടുള്ള വയലൻസ്. അപ്പോൾ ചിലപ്പോൾ കുഞ്ഞിനോടാവും, ചിലപ്പോൾ സ്വന്തമായിട്ട് നമുക്കാവും, അതെന്തായാലും. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെ പിന്നെ നമ്മളത് വേറെ ഒന്നും ചിന്തിക്കേണ്ട.
At a time when series of alleged dowry deaths or deaths by suicides have been reported, people like Sub-Inspector Annie SP are a timely reminder to not give up on life. With camera person SP Babu, Sneha Koshi for NDTV.
Well, that's a wrap on this bulletin from the entire team. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.